Good evening and welcome to the January 13th, 2015 school committee meeting. We're glad to have you with us. This meeting is being recorded by East Hampton Public Access Cable. The school committee would like to recognize and thank Tim Riley for taping tonight's production. East Hampton Public Access Cable Station Channels 5, 19, and 20 is looking for volunteers. If anyone is interested in helping to tape city government meetings, please contact Kathy Lynch at 413-203-1360. Superintendent Follinsby, do you have some announcements for us?
I do have a few announcements. The next school committee meetings are January 27th, February 10th, March 10th, April 14th, and 28th, May 12th, and June 9th, 2015. And the committee does need to set the time for the next meeting.
I also believe we approved last meeting school committee on June 23rd as well.
Yes.
Yes.
June
Yes.
23rd.
Thank
You're
you
right, Brian.
for pointing
Thank
that out,
you.
Brian.
You're psyched to be at that one.
Thank you.
Did you want to do that now?
We could do that. One thing I wanted to mention before we talk about what time that's going to be is that we need to schedule a work session for a mid-cycle formative assessment for the superintendent. And so that needs to happen either the last meeting in January or the first meeting in February. So I was going to suggest that maybe we try to do that at the next meeting. And if that were to be the case, what time would work? Could we do a 6 o'clock for a work session? Or is that too difficult for people for the work sessions?
I think we demonstrated tonight that 6 o'clock was too
6:30
tough.
is a lot better.
I think
So should
6:30
we-
makes it reasonable, more reasonable. That's my opinion.
6:30 for the work session, 6:30 to 7:30, and then our regular meeting starts at 7:30?
After our meeting?
Start the school committee
work
meeting at
session.
6:30 and then do the work session after.
Like that. We could do that? I like that.
I'm good with
Is
either.
everybody else fine?
Same time frame, or whichever one happens in which order.
Okay. So does that sound like that's the preference, to do the 6:30 regular meeting, and then we'll do the work session afterwards? Okay.
Fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not making any promises because I failed this time, but I will try.
Or should we go back to, I mean,
Why don't you leave it at that for now, and Ms. Colby can put that out and see if there are any other issues with that.
all right, we'll go with that. 6:30 for the next meeting, work session following the regular meeting. Okay.
All
Thank
right,
you very
shall I
much.
Go on with my announcements?
Yes, please.
All right. Special Education Parent Advisory Council will meet on the following dates in the conference room on the second floor at 50 Payson Avenue. January 14th, February 11th, March 11th, April 8th, March 13th, and June 10th. There is no school on Monday, January 19th, due to Martin Luther King birthday. There is no school on Monday, January 26th, due to Teacher Professional Development Day and semester change. There is no school February 16th through 20th due to Washington's birthday and winter break. There are half days of school on Thursday and Friday, March 19th and 20th, due to parent-teacher conferences. There is a half day of school on Tuesday, March 24th, due to Teacher Professional Development Day. There is no school on Friday, April 3rd, due to Good Friday. There is no school April 20th through 24th due to Patriots' Day and spring break. There is a half day of school on Friday, May 1st, due to Teacher Professional Development Day. There is no school on Monday, May 25th, due to Memorial Day. And at this time, with no cancellations, the last day of school is scheduled for Thursday, June 18th. Now Friday, June 19th. Correct. Sounds like a lot of days off. Time out.
Thank you very much. Do we have any correspondence?
We did receive an educator evaluation e-newsletter for the month of December 2014.
Did you want to just comment on it?
It was mainly focused on getting the most out of professional development and dealing with issues of professional licensure. And then there was also a mini article about the educator evaluation ratings from 2013 and 14. That information was recently released.
And the main reason that I included this was that our school district, the East Hampton Public Schools, are mentioned in this newsletter as a result of a group of teachers from the high school and Dr. Perrone going to the curriculum summit that happened earlier this year. And so it says they're part of the spotlight in the Educator newsletter. And this month's Implementation Spotlight, we share strategies for linking educator evaluation and professional development, PD, to support educators' continuous learning and growth. Read on to learn about the work happening in Ashland Public Schools, East Hampton Public Schools, Groton Dunstable Public Schools, and Manchester Essex Regional School District. And then they go on to talk about how our presentation, the presentation from our high school, is about creating synergy between the educator evaluation system and the instructional core. And it really highlighted some tremendous work that's going on at our high school. We are getting accolades from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education for the work in forming professional learning communities, learning walks, and data teams, and creating all of this with a synergy that really is about providing the best instructional practices for our students. So the high school deserves much credit for their work, and we're hoping to spread the work that's being done at the high school to our middle school and then to our elementary schools. It's all very, very exciting. So congratulations to the high school for being featured in the Educator Evaluation e-newsletter that every district across the state receives.
Thank you, Nancy.
Once again, on the cutting edge.
Exactly. Wonderful.
Okay, moving on to gifts.
We do have several tonight. Move to vote to accept with gratitude and appreciation the following gifts. The 5K Apple a Day Fundraiser Committee for the donation of $4,774 to update technology at Center Pepin and Maple Schools. Elaine Hartley and Russell Brain of Park Hill Orchard for the donation of time and space for the building of the shed for the Center Pepin School Garden. Craig McNeil and Marie Brown for the donation of wood, time, skill, and energy put into the Center Pepin School Garden. Rick and Laura Brown for the donation of time, skill, and energy put into the Center Pepin School Garden. Brian Leff of Tree Cycle for the donation of time, skill, and tools used to build the shed at the Center Pepin School Garden. East Hampton Rotary Club for the donation of $1,000 to the Center Pepin School Garden. Mary Harding for the donation of $100 for the East Hampton High School We the People. Dr. Nora Henke for the donation of $100 to East Hampton High School Student Renaissance. Young World Child Care Center for the donation of $50 for the East Hampton High School Student Renaissance. Dalton LaValle Post 224 American Legion for the donation of $500 for the East Hampton High School Band. Samantha Donuts LLC DBA Dunkin' Donuts for the donation of $645 for the East Hampton High School Student Renaissance.
Thank you very, very much. Okay.
He's second in a vote.
Oh, we need to vote and accept. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
All those in favor of
Need a
this?
second?
Oh,
Just a second.
motion first. I'm sorry.
Second.
I had the motion.
Oh,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Sorry,
That's okay.
it's been a while. Okay, this is the public speak portion of our meeting. If anyone here would like to come up and address the committee, we'd invite you to do so at this time, and we just ask you to come to the podium and state your name and where you're from, and that would be at this time. I guess not. Okay, so we'll be moving on to our Finance Subcommittee report.
You have
Report.
the minutes from the December 9th meeting. Were at your seats when you got here. Sorry you didn't get those ahead of time. A couple things discussed: the hourly minimum wage going up and some special education costs that came up recently. So we talked about both of those. Also, Deb, Nancy, and myself on Saturday all went to the public hearing of the the Foundation Budget Review Commission.
Is that the Chapter 70?
Yeah, exactly. So that was in the paper a couple times this past couple weeks. That was interesting. Just a lot going on in a lot of districts all over the state, and nice that they came out and heard from Western Mass a little bit. Hopefully it helps somewhere down the road. And then also as we begin the budget process for next year. It's going to take a little different shape than last year, so it'll be less workshop meetings for the whole committee, but the finance subcommittee is going to be working a little harder this year on that. So you'll see that coming up in the next couple months in a little different form. And just a reminder to Deb and Laura, I want to touch base on calendars at the end of tonight's meeting.
Very good.
Can I ask a quick question on the budget review meeting from last weekend? Did the districts or the superintendents individually, I don't know if it happened at a district level or superintendents, is there feedback, is there comments, is there?
There was an opportunity for anyone who wanted to give testimony to the panel, and there were many, many people who wanted to give
3
testimony.
minutes? Is that what they gave you?
Excuse me?
3 minutes? They gave
3
you?
minutes, but it started at 11 o'clock, and I was still there at 1:30, and it was still going on, and I think Deb left at
2:45.
2:45.
And Dan?
They were still going.
2:45, and they were still going.
I signed up to give testimony, but I got there just before it began, and so I was at the very end of the list. And then as I listened to the testimony, there's also an opportunity to send written testimony. So as I listened to the testimony and what it was that the panel wanted, I got some new ideas about, what we could put in our written comments to the commission. So I crossed my name off, which probably I wouldn't have gotten there until 4 o'clock anyway. And we're in the process of doing written comments that we will send to the commission. They are charged with finishing this process by the end of June. And so it was great that they were out here and heard from so many people about the issues that we're having with the inadequate funding brought to school districts through Chapter 70, the foundation budget.
Can I ask you, Nancy, what did you feel like the makeup was? Was it a lot of parents? Was it a lot, what did you feel?
It was more staff and superintendents. That was primarily the audience, and school committee members.
There were a couple of senators, representatives there.
True. Some of our legislators, a few parents, and a few students.
One of the things I have to say that it was interesting for me to just listen for 3 hours to all of these people from all these other districts get up and speak about all of their challenges and issues and frustrations and financial impossible situations. And the one thing, as sad as this is to say, it was comforting to me in some level to know that, boy, we're not alone. And in many cases, I think we're managing things at a far better level than a lot of our area districts are. And I walked out of there feeling sad to say, but really good about our situation and really good about where we're at in comparison to everything that I heard that day. I don't know, I just thought share that with you. I mean, not that we're, in a good place financially, but it was just very, and as much as you know that intellectually that everybody's struggling, it's a different thing to sit there and listen to the details for such a long time.
I think what it did point out were the issues that are particularly pertinent here in Western Massachusetts and in rural communities, much like ours. So there was, because they've done these testimonies out in the eastern part of the state, they've done them, with the big urban districts, and they were represented there as well, Springfield and Holyoke. But there was clearly a focus on the issues that we face in Western Massachusetts as small rural districts. And so, I'm encouraged that they are out here gathering this information, and I'm hoping that there will be a change in the funding formulas that will benefit districts like East Hampton. I'm hopeful now.
Yeah.
Is it possible, or maybe they're all shared publicly, I just didn't delve into this enough, but will we get, or will the public get, or is it public once it's sent into the commission, the testimonies that are given, or our districts?
I
comments
keep
and
getting a
testimony?
number of them, but not all of them, and all the testimonies are videotaped, but that would be a lengthy process. I can forward the ones to you that I've gotten through the Massachusetts Superintendents Association.
I would appreciate.
It's sort of representative.
I would be interested
I'll
to
do
see,
that.
and I would love if I could see ours. Do you put ours together on your own, or is that a collective?
I'm
leadership
working
team?
with the mayor and with Andy Paquette, and certainly with school committee as well. I've talked with Deb about it and with and told her that I would get a draft out to all of you. When the draft is ready, I'll send it out to all of you and get your feedback on it. And to anyone else who's interested in seeing the draft before it goes out.
And I honestly think that written testimony is going to be as valuable as any of the oral testimonies were. Actually, I think it's even more beneficial for us to be at that stage and providing the written testimony because a lot of what they heard that day I think was very, very repetitive, and we know now exactly what's going to be most beneficial to them to hear from us. So I think
there's a power in that. Clearly, if there's 200 people delivering the same message, there's a continuity there, but then there's a different power in highlighting very specific.
And having that foundation of knowledge. I agree.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay, policy subcommittee.
Yep, so in light of actually what the Finance Subcommittee spoke about, we need to update a couple of our policies. So you have the minutes of our last meeting in here, as well as a couple policies. So the first policy, substitution teacher compensation, needs to be updated because of the minimum wage change. So I would like to make a motion for the first reading of policy GCBC-1, the substitution teacher compensation policy.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
And the second policy that we reviewed was the community use of facilities, which we realized we did need to remove the use of the pool, and we also needed to update the custodial fees within that policy. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the first reading of the community use of facilities, policy KG-E.
Second?
Before we vote on that, I would just like to ask if the examples that are given in category A, B, and C under the rental charges, if they could be reviewed and re-examined on that list.
Yes.
Cool.
Deb Lucia and I looked at it again today, and it seems that some of the examples are outdated, so I could review that and revise it for the next reading.
Okay. We can still accept this reading? We
do
can
that.
revise
Are we
between
able to do
readings, right?
Okay.
We can, so that's the note we're offering? Okay.
Okay. So then we'll go ahead and vote. Is there any other discussion on that?
I was just wondering about
Thank you for bringing that up.
15 an hour to 35 an hour. I don't know if I'm looking in the wrong place here. I've got $5 an hour in the old one and the 35 in the new one.
For which,
What are you looking at, Dan?
Current page 1 of 2, when the building is open / staff, custodial fees $2.50 an hour to $5 an hour. So it's from some time ago, it sounds like.
yeah.
And then the new one is 35. So I just want to make sure we had the numbers right. There's 15 on the minutes and then 5 on there. And then I was just kind of wondering where the 35 came from.
The 35 came from the maximum amount that is paid a custodian for overtime. And what you're seeing in 2 custodial fees, but I'm happy to look at this again also, is for if the building is open and already staffed. So there's just a small extra amount charged for the custodian's work. And the $35 an hour would be if the building is open specifically for an event. It would be a maximum of that.
Okay.
I'm sorry, the 15 I just had in my minutes, so.
And that's not really as important.
I can look at, review those small amounts. They are very small. The $2.50 and the $5. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's 15 here and 5 here, which is, either way,
Oh, I see.
it's going, it's not going to be either of those. I just wanted to, I didn't know if we needed some
So
consistency there.
let's review those as well.
Okay.
We just, you know, we didn't really talk about the whole entire policy, we were just looking at increasing the custodial fee and removing the use of the pool in there. So at that point, just to say I apologize, we weren't looking at that whole policy, but.
Apologize.
So we can.
Is there a motion on
Yeah,
that?
absolutely.
Yes, there was, and there was a second.
So are we ready to go ahead and vote? All those in favor of the first reading?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Okay. Moving on to the CES update.
Our next meeting is on January 28th.
Okay. And our student activities update from Ryan Atwater.
Yes. So primarily, not included in the days off and such, at the high school, final exams will be held January 22nd and 23rd, and as a result, classes will be on a half-day schedule. Last week's and this evening's girls' basketball games were both held in dedication of their former coach, Jay Fortier, who passed last week. The East Hampton High School Student Council raised over $800 in their Dollar Wars fundraiser to support 2 families in need this previous holiday season. The Student Council is also pushing to adopt a midterm next year, in which a midterm would count for a 5% of your overall class grade, and finals would be decreased from 20% to 15%. If approved, that would be effective next school year. The Student Council has also requested, per their guidance, that the administration tech director install hotspots throughout the school in cell phone approved areas. And lastly, the APOS History We the People team will be competing at Harvard University against teams across the state on January 31st.
Very good. Thank you, Brian. Okay, moving on. Is the superintendent's report? Superintendent Fowlsby.
Yes, so we have a number of people here this evening to help us with this. Our first report is on East Hampton High School's guidance study. School committee members asked that we have another presentation by East Hampton High School guidance. So we have Chad McGuire here this evening to give us a little presentation and answer your questions.
Thank you. So thank you for inviting us down tonight. I'm here, Chad McGuire, representing the guidance staff. Chris Sabra was unfortunately unable to attend tonight. But she did a lot of the work in preparing this information that was in front of you. So as Ms. Follansby had mentioned, back in early November, we were invited to start preparing information based upon some questions that was coming out of the school committee, specific to the students of East Hampton High School in the class of 2014, looking at where our students were attending, where were they applying to, where were they accepted, and then how those students might compare to students in other surrounding districts. So before you should have a report that puts together it's self-reported information. So this is information reported by the graduates themselves. There is no specific program that we have at the high school that would track that information. There is a program called, and we had mentioned this at the last time we presented last year, called Naviance, which is a program that you have to purchase, and that would actually track the information, as well as the Department of Ed has a program called Edwin Analytics, which does track the information, but it is self-reported by the colleges, so they have to voluntarily report the information. And for example, the UMass State University system does not report out to that. So it's really, I don't know how viable it is. It's good information, but it doesn't encompass all of our students. So the information you have in front of you is information presented by the graduates of the class of 2014 at the time that they were requesting their final transcripts to be sent. So you'll see the report with the data that shows where our students were attending, where they were accepted to, where they actually attended, what they were interested in studying. So that's roughly the first 6 pages of that is the initial report. In addition to that, we've enclosed our school profile. Our school profile shows you, especially on the back page, where our graduates have been accepted to over the course of the last 3 academic years. And then there's a larger packet of school profiles included, and those would be from our surrounding school districts. Just to show kind of a relationship as to, one, how we present our information on our school profile, in addition to that their school profiles would contain the information as well that states, where their students are accepted to, so we can kind of do some cross comparison between our students and their students. So, I didn't necessarily prepare a specific presentation because the information is available to you, but if you had any questions in reviewing that information that you wanted to ask, I could do my best in answering that for you.
Does anybody have any questions? Peter?
What do you think explains the relatively high rate of enrollment at a relatively small number and fairly geographically local schools compared to the more diverse and wider spread list of schools that students have been accepted to and these students are accepted to? Is there any sense that you have of why our students make those choices the way they do?
Sure. So I just want to make sure I'm being clear on your question. So you're saying students are accepted to numerous different schools but choose to attend more locally?
Right.
Yeah, and again, I don't think there's necessarily specific data that would back this up, but I definitely think, one, just the viability of schools in our area. Holyoke Community College is a fantastic a fantastic associate's degree granting school. Affordability certainly is a huge aspect to this. University of Massachusetts, while being one of the top schools, around really, it also has maintained itself from an affordability standpoint in comparison to other state universities, and especially from a private university standpoint. So I think when our students look at cost, certainly one being one aspect of it, it's a major factor in the decision-making process, but also access to programs. We are fortunate in Massachusetts to be a hub of higher ed, and we're also fortunate in our area to have a number of strong universities and state colleges. So again, it's more anecdotal, but I think when students are reporting out to us, it's certainly viability of programming as well as cost.
I just did a quick glance at the other schools, looking at their statistics on what percentage of their students are going to four-year schools versus two-year schools. And just comparing very quickly, I noticed EHS, looking at recent data for 2014, 34% of our students are going to four-year colleges, whereas Amherst is 71 to 76%, Belchertown 60, Frontiers 55%, Northampton 66%, Hopkins and Hadley is 82%. And I guess I understand the affordability perspective for the community colleges, but I wonder, because the same opportunity exists for the other area districts as well. So I often wonder why it's not more comparable to other districts in terms of our percentage of our students going to two-year schools versus four-year schools. And then I just noticed that 52% of our class took the SATs, of the 2014 EHS class took the SATs, and I thought that sounded on the lower end for a graduating class, percentage-wise. I don't know.
Yeah, and this is more opinionated answer. I think there's a danger in overly comparing yourself to other districts. I think those numbers represent our student body to an extent. Now, I will say that with regards to the SATs, that was actually the goal of Ms. Sabro and our goal this year was to specifically increase number of students having access to these higher stake tests, both SATs and ACTs. Specifically, our focus were on students from low SES backgrounds because we noticed that those numbers were even less represented. So while we could provide you that information at a later date, we've noticed in comparing that data that number went up dramatically due to those efforts. Again, it would be more anecdotal as to why our numbers might differ from other districts. But again, I think to be fair, we are who we are. I think our students, we're a different community than those other communities, and our students do what's right for them. So if it's the community college route, that's great. If it's employment, that's great. If it's career, military, or if that's the four-year route, they have to look at their individual family situations and make what's the right decision for them. So I couldn't give you any specific answer as to why that would be, but
I have a question,
Sure.
first of all. The statistics that Deb has here that, so we're roughly talking over 70% are attending either a 4- or 2-year college. It's my understanding that for admission to a 2-year college, you still need to have an SAT, or no?
That is not.
No. Okay, so then that answers my question, because I was going to say it doesn't make sense that only 52% are taking the test. So then perhaps the argument is the large majority of them don't find it required, so it's an unnecessary
It's
expense
certainly an
that they're
aspect to it.
avoiding.
Yeah, it's
Right.
certainly an aspect to
That
it.
would make sense.
Those students are still required to, as they would if they were going to attend to a public university, to take the AccuPlacer. So that is a placement test at the college level, and that would determine whether or not they're placing into college level classes or not. Unfortunately, that is protected information through FERPA, so we can't access that, whether or not the percent of our students who are, we could access the percent of our students who are placing those classes, but not necessarily who is and who isn't. And again, that's, a big piece of this is also out man hours. We were a staff of 5, that's now a staff of 3. So, it's kind of that balance of how much time can you commit to tracking graduates versus pouring your efforts into your currently enrolled students.
Just to twist the screws on the point that you're making, I was going to ask you, do we have any rough ideas of how much the program is that you were talking about that can track more information? Like roughly, what are those costs?
It's similar to Power School in a sense that it depends upon the various different programs you buy within the program and how long the length of contract. And then training as well for it. There are various different school districts in the area that have it. Southampton has it, Northampton has it. The ballpark answer is roughly $5,000 between, if you were to buy the whole program and utilize it. But obviously training would be a big piece of it as well. Program's great, but if you don't know how to use it, it's kind of a moot point. So
I also want to say, because a lot of different comments are kind of thrown out when we discuss this, and I always feel the need to kind of put this one perspective out that as I have young children too, and we have discussions with them about what their future plans may be. And I, from my own experiences and what I've witnessed and the students that I've taught, would really kind of preach a pragmatic approach to this and kind of releasing a stigma or this idea of an expectation that may or may not be useful in your actual life. So, I think it'd be nice to have further data to see our students, especially the ones that are attending 2-year colleges, what are they doing 5 years later? We're limited in our ability to track and assess that data. But it would be interesting because this might lead one to believe that we're maybe less successful in one quantitation. However, I wonder in the long term if making more pragmatic, conservative choices at this point don't benefit them later in life and entering less debt, pursuing, really making thoughtful choices about careers and fruitful, meaningful work, and not just the pursuit of a piece of paper.
And to that point, the Holyoke Community College has a widely appraised Commonwealth Honors College. They have various different articulations agreements with schools. For example, we've had a student who, within the last 4 years, graduated from East Hampton High School, went to Holyoke Community College, earned her associate's degree there, and is now finishing up her bachelor's at Cornell. Same degree, half the cost. Which, that doesn't necessarily say why they went that route, but it's certainly a major piece of that puzzle. So meeting your core requirements at a lower cost and still earning the same degree. It's all the families have to make that decision. The experience of a 4-year school versus the full 4 years versus attending a 2 and then finishing at a 4. So certainly adds to that as well.
Or perhaps just taking a 2-year degree, pursuing a field.
Absolutely.
And not getting, let's say, a 4-year degree in a liberal arts college that you're not ever going to use.
Right.
That happens to some people, So I think this kind of idea of diversity and accepting that, releasing some of these stigmas, because we do live in a very academia-conscious community, so.
And I think, to your point, I think the information is extremely interesting if you can access it, and if you have the capability of accessing it with the again, the number of hours that you have to put into that. So
I noticed with some sadness the report out recently that now the amount of revenue for the state university system is now more than 50% coming out of student tuition and less of it being supported by the state. For the first time in a long time, the families in the Commonwealth are bearing that load. And so I wanted to cycle back to the observation about the financial end of this. And I wonder if you think that our students have an awareness of the financial aid opportunities that exist at the private universities that aren't, sort of nominally sticker price, much more expensive, but often when you get down to what the expected family contribution is, the gap is not as significant.
Yeah, and so that is always a part of our conversation with the families when they come in for their junior year meeting, is that, again, I'm also being a parent, and I say this now and probably will be upset at myself when my daughter's 18 and going through this process, but often the conversation is don't worry about cost at this moment because you don't know what's going to happen when you go through that financial aid process, when you get those merit-based scholarships from the private schools that often aren't able to be given at the public institutions. And we know we usually use the metaphorical reference of, someone has presented this to us before, is shopping at Kohl's. The shirt is always $40, but it's also always 40% off. So it's that whole difference between sticker price versus the actual out-of-pocket price. When we've had various presenters come in to speak to that as well. We actually were fortunate this year to have an individual, Mark Vallada, come in and present to the parents who attended, who really got into that information about the understanding the expected family contribution, sticker price versus actual price, and then the presentation of the actual awards letters when those start coming out to the families and understanding them and what they mean. When you're seeing them coming from various different schools, they don't all look the same, and understanding the actual debt that would be accrued and how a family can calculate a comfort level of what they should be willing to take on in debt. So
The other factor, I think, is the cost of really thoughtfully and exhaustively exploring those options. To be, you can't ask an 18-year-old to commit to 4 years and $100,000 plus of their life to a place they can't even afford to visit exhaustively and really know that that's a valid check against it.
In one of our courses, personal finance, it's a great course where they can really delve into a lot of that practical usage of the numbers and looking at interest rates and calculating out financial aid packages and understanding what that information means as well. So it's nice that it's there's sort of a cross curriculum there in what we're trying to do with the guidance department as well as what's happening in some of the classrooms.
I'm sorry, one last note and one last question. I think that the mission of our school system is intentionally college and career ready, and I saw in the last week, the headline of the six-figure salary being earned by welders in certain markets in the United States, and I think we've had this conversation before in the time that I've been on the school committee about being aware that traditional trades often provide really good work and income that a family can live well on. Knowing that and setting that piece aside, if we as a community were in a different financial place, would your office like to have the Naviance system, or do you think that we?
No, I think yes, especially again given the position of our staff, as it has increasingly dwindled. There's certainly aspects of that program that are highly valuable and would allow us to present hard numbers to you as opposed to self-reported numbers. There's certainly viability in that program.
Mm-hmm. Did you say the cost was $5,000? Is that
It would differentiate based upon the levels of the program that you would purchase.
Annually or
is that
one time?
annually
It's
or one
within
time?
the contract. I believe it's a 3-year contract.
3 years.
Yeah. But again, it all depends upon what you lock yourself into and the various different aspects of the program that you're purchasing. So.
I think we'd all agree that it'd be one thing to know our students are making a pragmatic choice. I choose to stay here. I choose to attend this program. And we want to assure ourselves that they're not feeling their choices are somehow limited because of where they come from, what means they may or may not have at their disposal, or what they feel their potential is. Those are two distinctions that we just,
That's a great
personally.
point. That's a great point. Right.
Yeah, not as a question, but I'm speaking now from my own perspective. I realize that there's a menu of the services that you can choose with the Naviance program. In my limited experience with it, it offers, in some forms, really attractive ways for the students to access information and to complete their applications much more efficiently, and also for faculty who are supporting them with letters of recommendation. It's amazing how much it has changed that world from the days when I remember typing out, different college recommendations for every college and that a student might apply to. I know that there's always something else that we could spend the $5,000 on, or it might be $7,500, it might be $10,000, it might be something less than that. I think, given the importance of knowing what we would like to know, and given the opportunity to see the different impact that it might have on the kinds of sort of explorations that our students go through, that it would be worth looking at that. I know that it's almost better to look at it at a time in a really tight budget, because you realize unless the stars line up exactly right, we're likely to not be able to opt into it. And so in a way, we're less burdened by having to tweak the argument one way or the other depending on our own perspective on the overall budget. Let's go into it assuming that we probably can't afford to do it, but let's take a look at what it has to offer, because I think we might find that it's one more reason and one more way we can communicate to the broader community about the success for the students who do elect college as the path that they want to take. So I would encourage the committee as a whole to ask, I don't know how much the guidance department itself needs to document it. I think this requires, expression here to be enough for me to say we ought to ask the leadership team to investigate as to whether or not this is as an important use of money going forward.
If that was supported, I would be interested in learning more about it, because my gut reaction, and I have a lot of respect for you, Peter, and you often bring me to a place of thinking of things through a different lens, because my gut response is $5,000. We've cut so much as far as programs and content and people, and I initially want to place my trust in that we're doing really well. Let's get programs and content and people back up, and I think the data will then speak. But then I hear you, and it makes sense. So in a more than lean budget, maybe learning a little bit more about it is not a bad idea, but that's not where my gut goes. It's definitely outside of my comfort zone. So
Yeah,
I would need to be educated and informed before I could advocate for it.
And I don't mean to suggest that technology and that software is going to replace the reduction in staff. I think in the end, having that person-to-person contact between a student who's making a decision about where they're going next is the best place. Unfortunately, I don't know the human being that's going to walk through the door for $5,000 or $7,000, and if it will help the remaining staff do their job better. You're right. If we start from zero, it's not so good. If we start from 50,000, which is what it would cost us to put another person in the guidance offset a minimum, then maybe in lean times this is worth considering from that perspective.
Well, certainly investigating it isn't going to cost us anything, and we can start right away to do that. And then as we build the budget and learn what our figures are, we'll make a number of decisions, and that certainly could be one of them.
And if Chris came in and said, that she's more agnostic about it, then I'm not trying to push something on the folks who know the needs of our students better than I do.
Well,
I defer
I think,
to you.
to your point, it does definitely streamline the process for students when they're applying, so it's helpful on the front end, but on the back end, it also, the more data we can access, the more hard numbers you can access, certainly the more it enables you to do your job more effectively, because you have the numbers to support a direction you want to channel your efforts in. So
It kind of calls to mind the conversations that we had last year with the curriculum director discussing, as much as we can all decry the MCAS testing, we can make use of that by learning where in lean times to focus the laser. And it sounds like this might be, as Peter is alluding to, we may not be able to afford another guidance person. However, if we can find a portion of that, can we improve the efficacy of the department as a whole and help the students?
Okay.
yeah, great. Well, thanks for your
think we
time.
have a plan.
Thank you for inviting, or unless there was
I was just going to suggest, I know we got all of this information tonight, and it's a lot to look through, and I just wanted to mention if we wanted to look through it on our own more carefully, and if we had any questions in the next meeting or the meeting after that we wanted to share, that we could do that. continue the conversation. And secondly, I just wanted to say, as a parent who has a senior in high school right now at EHS, I just want to thank you and commend you for all the hard work that you and Ms. Savaro do daily, and I'm in awe seeing all that goes on and all that you do for parents and for students, and the hard work that you put in and the wonderful guidance you provide, and I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. And I'm happy to come back to present further. This allows me to miss bedtime, which isn't a bad thing sometimes. So, so I'm happy to come back if need be.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And our second presentation this evening is on the physical education waivers, and I believe Nancy Dunn? Ms. Dunn is going to present, along with some others. Does she have? And Dr. Perone is here. I don't know whether you're going to add to this presentation.
Edge of your seat.
Undecided. Good evening. Nancy Dunn, Health and Physical Education Team Leader at the high school. We're here this evening at the request of the school committee to address the possibility of implementing a policy to allow waivers for athletes at East Hampton High School. Last spring, I came before the school committee addressing the same concern and provided rationale at that time on why providing waivers should be reconsidered. And I wanted to thank you for your consideration in waiting to act on this very important decision, and your willingness to think it through with input from faculty, from students, from the school council, and from administration. As you requested, I've researched the programs of 20 schools in the area and looked at what they do in their physical education programs. I put that in front of each of you this evening. And I've provided each of you with a copy of the program of studies in the area of physical education from 10 of those schools that were researched. And on the list in the front are the 20 schools that I did look at their program of studies. Of all the schools researched, the 20 schools, Westfield High School and Hopkins Academy are the only two schools that provided waivers, and they were limited waivers.
Can you repeat that, please, Nancy? The 3 schools?
To 2 schools.
I'm sorry.
Hopkins Academy and Westfield High School, and they were limited waivers. And those 2 programs of study are on the very top of your packet. So you can, in the program of studies, if there is a waiver, it would say it in the physical education section. So I copied 10 of them and decided I'd start the same paper. And then you can, okay, so those 2 are at the top of your program. So and I'm sure that you would be interested in, so I'll just give that to you. So for sports exemption at Westfield, it must be a bona fide member of a team during the year of exemption. So it was high school athletic teams only. It was grades 11 and 12 only. The exemption must be approved by the head coach, athletic director, and principal, and filed with athletic director. And at Hopkins Academy, the only thing it read in there was per approval of the principal. So there wasn't any detail in that, and I did try to contact them, but hadn't heard back. So it's just at the principal's discretion. What that discretion involved, I don't have that information at this time. In addition to the program of studies for physical education, I've provided you, did anybody want to ask any more questions on the research school? Yeah? Okay. So in addition to that, I've provided you with a sampling of student essays on both sides of the issue. In my physical education class, we recently spent 2 days discussing and debating the issue. And I must say, provided a very real-life educational experience for students and was inspiring for me as a teacher. I did not participate in the debate, but the students did know my position. To my surprise, at the start of the debate, the majority of students thought that physical education should be waived for athletes. Following the debate, students had to write an essay on the following topic. Should physical education be waived for athletes? Why or why not? Discuss the rationale behind your decision and an action plan as to what this would look like in our school. How would it be implemented, and who would be eligible for the waiver? After receiving students' essays, I found that many who had been very vocal in the debate about why it should be waived had changed their position, most of whom were athletes. Following the debate, these were a couple of the comments I received from several students. The debate really helped me to understand the other side and really got me thinking. After listening to everybody, I realized that it is unfair to other groups in the school. I think it should be optional, but I don't really know why. I think it should be optional, but really there is not much to say about why it should be. I just think it should be. So I've included their essays there, and I've included both sides, kids from both sides on their positions. They were well-written essays by the kids. The kids who turned them in did so in a very thoughtful way. In debate, in listening to their debate and reading their essays, one of the things students said that stood out was, if I participate in an art program outside of the school, can I be exempt from art class or a science class if I do an internship at Arcadia? Another was that more course offerings that were specific, such as net sports, team sports, conditioning, sports management, low-impact aerobics, would be ideal and in the best interest of students. As of last year, our physical education program did offer these courses. In fact, sports management and conditioning were two of the most popular courses selected by athletes. In addition, athletes in our school take well beyond a majority of athletes in our school take well beyond the 8 required credits required for graduation. While losing a physical education teacher has impacted our program, it has not impacted what physical education provides students. Overall health benefits of total fitness. The 10th graders every year have their body mass index calculated by the school nurse. And for the last 4 years, I reviewed just the general records, not individual students. But 30 to 40% of our students in all of the last 4 years, 30 to 40% are either in the overweight or obese category. Unfortunately, I'm not sure what percentage of these might be athletes, but students do agree that not all athletes are physically fit. I just want to point out too that our football and our soccer programs are no-cut programs, which means that anybody can join those teams and be an athlete and on the team. Non-sedentary time in today's technical world, physical education provides that. Social emotional growth, team and individual sports, lifetime activities, and not just focus on one sport. And I think one of the things that we discussed that was really important with my department and team leaders is the socialization that kids get, athletes with non-athletes and non-athletes with athletes. One of the things we pride ourselves on in our school is kids' connection with each other, and they all get along, and the diversity there. And again, in today's technological world, that these kids in the gym connect with each other in a way that they ordinarily wouldn't. And lastly, having a certified, they have the chance to have a certified physical education specialist, highly qualified teacher working with them. So, there's questions that remain are, what defines an athlete? Will physical education be outsourced to a degree to non-degree instructors? Will it cause separation within our school between athletes and non-athletes? Are we compromising the integrity of our program that we're trying to maintain, or even that of physical education? And will this open the door for exemptions in other areas? So, lastly, the school council last spring brought this issue up at the school council, and they did oppose the waivers for athletes at that time. And based on the research that I've done and the work since you requested me to come back and look for feedback again this year, the cons of providing waivers for athletes in our school, in my opinion and my research, outweigh the pros of doing it. So with that said, I have some students here. I have two students here who I'm sure you all know, Brian and Brian, the Bryans. And there's some other students who are going to be here tonight who couldn't be. Even a couple of the kids on the other side of the issue who felt strongly, and some kids in the middle. And since they can't be here, they also said that they would come at another time, just so that there's both sides. So I want to turn this over right now to Brian.
Good evening. I'm Brian Delaney. I'm a student at East Hampton High School. I also participate on the golf team in East Hampton High School athletics. I do have a concern. My concern that I wanted to share tonight, and I shared it with Ms. Dunn as well, is I believe that this athletics waiver promotes inequality among our students, and that's my major concern. If you waive athletics, there's students that just aren't athletic and they don't participate in athletics, but they may do something else outside of school, whether it be like a pottery class, or if they write poetry, or if they're a participant in music and band. I felt as though that this waiver would promote the athletes, separate them, and almost make them the elite. And I didn't agree with that. I believe that it should be left as it is, because it's unfair to the students who don't participate in athletics, because there are some students that would likely be offended by it because they participate in band or something like that, and they don't even have the opportunity to have their opinion in getting waived out of, say, a band class or something along those lines. So with that being said, I don't agree with the waiver. Coming from an athletic standpoint, I play athletics, golf myself, but I know from other students that don't. They do enjoy their gym classes, and I haven't heard. I personally don't agree with it, but I believe that it does promote inequality and it separates the athletes to an elite, and I don't agree. So, thank you.
I also concur with Brian, thinking that it does create a social gap between athletes and all of the other non-athletes and students who participate in clubs and other activities at EHS. But also I believe that PE provides too much of an academic rigor to be cut as a course for some students. As Ms. Dunn said, we have some phenomenal PE teachers and PE courses at the high school. In fact, I've had the opportunity of taking 2 this semester. However, if a student were to waive such a class due to their athletic involvement, they miss out on important lessons and possibly not live an overall healthy life. When you play a sport, you only focus on that one area of expertise, whereas in a PE course, you are able to explore sports and other activities outside of your comfort zone, along with a health and fitness academic portion. I know we spend many days in Ms. Dunn's classroom on the 3rd floor and many days in the gym. So there is more to the physical education department than meets the eye of running around a track and playing dodgeball, which is banned at EHS.
Running around the track?
Yes, that's what's being
Yes,
Peter.
of course. So I heavily oppose the idea of athletes being able to waive PE credits because it's just too important of a class to cut. There's so much value in the physical education department, and to allow some students to get out of that because of a chosen responsibility, it just seems unfair. Thank you.
I have a couple questions for any of the 3 of you. I felt like I have a really good understanding of that side of the argument. I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit about the curriculum that we have in place and also the requirements that we have in place for students.
Sure. In 9th grade, students are required to take 8 physical education credits by the time they graduate. When they enter the 9th grade, they get 2 of their credits right off the bat, and that's a pretty strong program where the 9th graders are just with the 9th graders. we created that program because 9th graders were taking phys ed with 12th graders. So they get 2 credits right off the bat there. And then they can elect their other 6 credits through a semester course or quarter credits. And the rest is their 3 years. And the program that kids talked about, even in the class debate the other day, was the program we had last year. We have a well-respected physical education program. And this year, with the cut of a physical education teacher, we're really doing our best to revamp the program of studies and to keep the quality that we can maintain despite that loss. And that was some of kids' disappointment that came out. And if you look at the program of studies from other schools, that was the direction we were moving in, like the sports management for athletes, a coaching course for athletes. I mean, we were looking to create some really viable courses for them. I mean, we were doing it. The sports management was pretty popular with the athletes. You know, so they could take, there's sports credit for a course that's not as rigorous if they didn't want that, but actually so the athletes were signing up for conditioning, the semester-long conditioning course.
At what point do we address, and is it kind of homogenous across for the entire student population? Do we address just basic wellness, sexuality, body awareness? Is that in the 9th grade curriculum? At what
Yes.
point? Okay.
The students also in the 9th grade curriculum take 2 credits of health. So it actually is a really nice program. Mr. Miller gets them for a quarter, then they flip-flop and come to me for a quarter. And I'm the health teacher. I do the health at the high school. So then every 9th grader has health education with me.
And then beyond that, it sounds like it's basically focused conditioning or specific sports or...
Electives.
Okay.
Yes. And all those courses that we offer are in the program of studies. But some of them didn't get offered this year because of the cut, but conditioning is still offered, and team sports, net sports, modern physical education. But what happened because of class sizes, kids got put where they didn't get the choice that they wanted, so it became, low impact. I'm teaching low impact right now, and I have some kids in there who, are just not yoga, Pilates. They don't, I have these hardcore athletes in there who, come on.
Time to open them. Nice. Thank you.
Okay.
I guess I would just make the observation. Well, first, let me say that I applaud students and both of you for speaking. I want to be clear that I think one of the worst things that an adult who disagrees with you is tell you that they understand how you feel and then go on. So I'll just say up front and out of respect, I am wondering if you've protested too much. It sounds as though through education, the minds of some of your peers have been changed as to whether or not they would exercise the option. As I look at the notes, the annotation on many of these essays, it says this is someone who thought at first that the waiver should exist, but now think it should not be. And I imagine that means, though this is a leap of logic, I know, that they would perhaps be less likely to exercise the option were it available to them. So I'm wondering if part of the challenge here is, can we make an option available and then educate people more systematically? I realize that this was just a part of an effort within one class or a couple of classes where you had a debate, but I'm wondering if people in the school, if the students in the school understood what the folks who've written these essays understood, if the percentage of people who would actually exercise the option might be smaller than we fear, as you suggested, and therefore the concerns about the educational experience of those students, the impact on a social gap, the impact on equality, would be less grave than we might imagine if we look at sort of a worst case scenario. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are as to saying, we're going to create an option, we might create an option, but we're going to educate people about the real merits of what currently exists, going from a requirement to a recommendation. That the recommendation would be that students continue to complete the physical education program as they have for a long time, but allowing the option for, whatever percentage of folks aren't persuaded by that recommendation and are participating in my own view, it would be an East Hampton High School program, so I'm less concerned about folks coming in next year saying that I'm taking a program over at some institution outside of the high school and saying they want to be exempt for something within the high school for that. I think that's a bit of a red herring, because if we limit this to students who are participating in East Hampton High School athletics, I think it becomes a little bit of a cleaner question for me. And I'm still struggling with thinking why I wouldn't want to give someone who's on the basketball team or the soccer team the opportunity to study a science elective or an extra language or whatever academic enrichment or other enrichment they might pursue.
Can I address him and then you can address him? Is that okay? Because I'm going to lose my train of thought. I have a few years on you. So it's like a seat of moment. So what I'm wondering, kind of formulating in my head, is to address this equality question, because I think we have a really special community in that high school that is rare, and I can understand the veracity and the desire to protect that. So I'm wondering, just to tease out an idea of kind of broadening this, rather, what about the option of lessening such a requirement but making it more universal by saying the introduction of an independent study option for arts and physical education, where if there is a student who feels they're somewhat limited in, there's 1 or 2 additional courses I'd like to take, I feel a little locked into what I'm doing, and I do pursue see, I knew I could get Vito out of his chair. I do exhaustively pursue a specific art or a specific sport or something to that, is that I understand that's a little bit of breaking the mold, but maybe that's something that would be a benefit for our students if we could take the time to investigate it.
And we currently have an independent study.
So that would
in
be
the program
something of an
studies.
equivalent.
And in my years at East Hampton, students have used it in the arts, in band, they've used it in health. I know for a fact that they've done that. So students use that. It's a tool in the toolbox. And that's why when we first talked about this, that was the first thing that sprang to my mind, is independent study would be a perfect place for that to happen.
Could we not then create a PE independent study
We could.
Well,
as an option to a waiver?
That option exists now, really.
That option exists now.
For example, somebody who is dancing a year, year round, something that they have done for a number of years, that they're perfecting as an art that's a benefit to their health and their physical wellness. I don't see how that's any more or less.
Well, that's happening now.
So wouldn't that address the issue that we're trying to, I don't understand.
Independent studies now are overseen by certified teachers.
Yeah.
So our independent studies that happen in the high
Okay, so
school.
could we broaden the definition of an independent study to allow for some of the things? Would that help to ease, would that be a compromise?
You mean in
I
lieu
don't
of, like you do
think
another
so.
independent?
I don't think so.
I'm not following.
You know what?
I feel pretty strongly that certified teachers are the ones that should be overseeing credits being given to students. That's why, Ms. Dunn has a master's in
Right.
physical education and health.
Okay, so can I then, just because I have this hankering to come back to the original question, but I'll play the game this way. Are the staff that coach our school sports not qualified in that sense?
They're
I
not.
didn't think you said that. I just want to be clear.
Certified. Certified
They may-
educators.
right.
They
So-
are not.
Right, so they're not certified, but you would still argue that they're qualified but for the certification. I guess my question then is,
They're not certified educators.
yeah, I would go.
It seems 2 separate points, either relaxing a requirement or granting credits. And I don't want to impose on saying we should broaden who's allowed to grant credits to students. I absolutely respect where you're coming from. My argument is a more creative way to relax a requirement if it's an impediment for a small population of students, without doing anything to threaten that very special collegiate community that you have there, that feels very equal, that feels, that doesn't have that other strata.
I'd just like to share. Oh, go ahead, Wendy.
I think my question.
Should we let Brian speak?
Do you want to let
Because he did
Brian
want to speak.
respond? I know he wanted to.
Sorry, Brian.
No, but what I did want to say, going back on on your point too is another opinion of mine. Sports, clubs, all of these activities are not required. No one is forcing anyone to do basketball, to do football, to do soccer. So in my opinion, when I go and I join a club, I commit myself to the time that it takes outside of school and after school. So in my opinion, if a student, has sports after school and then they have, baseball and basketball, they've committed their time to that sport, and I don't believe that it should affect what they do in school. And again, going back on, I think that the PE and all the classes should stay the same. And I think it doesn't make entirely good sense to me that why would a student who has committed their time to the sport and to the club want to take time out of their school and out of their classes that they're required to take now to put more time towards a club that they are not required to take and to participate in. So that's my opinion on that. So I think that if a student wants to play basketball, they need to account for the time that it's going to take outside of school, as well as the homework that will come along with the classes that they take, as well as
I'm really excited to debate with you for a long time about this, but I'll just give you one example as a counter to that. What if the student is asking for the waiver so that they can take additional studies within the program? So what if the student is saying, I'd like the waiver so that the time that I would normally devote to physical education can be devoted to another of the great offerings within East Hampton High School program?
And
Can I make my
I've
comment?
just, go ahead, Monty.
Then every student should be allowed that.
Yes.
I have a comment, opinion, and a question. And I'm going to start with my question first, and I think it's more for you, Vito, is that if there were a great exception. No, I'm going to give my comment first. Sorry, take it back.
Okay?
My daughter's little, dances like a fiend, ballet, loves ballet. I am probably the mature, responsible, law-abiding, tax-paying, employed person that I am today because of sports outside of school. I think that PE, in my opinion, provides so much more than a physical activity, which in and of itself is priceless, in my personal subjective opinion, but I also believe it pulls in so many other pieces that are important to us being adults that we miss. And just because someone's really good on a football field or basketball field, that's with their buddies. The ability to be in gym might put them in different arrangements, and I could go on and on. We could have a debate, but suffice it to say, I'm not in favor of a PE waiver, and that is from someone who is a tried and true athlete. You wouldn't know it now, I know, and who's, I'm sure, I have no doubts, and I might be biased because she's my daughter, but I have a feeling that my daughter ballet will be a 90% part of her life from here on out, and I will not favor her getting to waive a PE in school. I think it's crucial that she participates in that educational piece of her schooling, and if I want her to get additional academic things, I will make sure she gets it, just like the person who, we go and get those extra things outside of places that we need them. And that's my opinion. And then my question to you after that is, if there is someone that has that, it's some grand exception, is it just a black and white thing, or could someone come to you and propose something and say, my kid is, they're qualifying for the Olympics next week? I mean, I'm talking about if there's some grand thing out there, I'm hoping that we have the capacity within our district to say, you know what, that person might not need to take this PE class or whatever it is.
Maybe we should let Dr. Perrone address that question first and then see what other questions and comments there are.
A lot of, when you look at policies, a lot of it at the discretion of the principal, at the discretion of the superintendent. So there are gray areas where you can work, and we've worked around those things with independent studies in the past. But those independent studies in the past have always been with a certified teacher, because there's a credit that's being granted that's attached to it. And so that has been where I'm willing to be flexible. I'm willing to think outside the box and solve a problem, because this is about them, and I want to do what's right for them and those students that are in front of me. And if someone comes in and advocates for Sally Sue to do X, well, then let's find a way for that to happen, as long as we can do it within what I feel is comfortable, within the policies and the procedures that are set up. But the independent study I just use as an example is a tool that we use, but it's always been applied with a certified teacher. And that certification, I think, is important because there's frameworks and standards that are established by the state that we are asked to abide by.
Okay. I just wanted to share, I'm one of the people that was a proponent of investigating this option of physical education waivers, and I just want to share with you my personal story as to why. I have a daughter who's a senior at EHS right now, and she has been an avid ballet dancer for many, many years, and she trains a minimum of 3 hours a day every single day and 6 hours a day on Saturday all year. And in the summer, she goes away and she's not living at home and usually training 65 hours a week. So you get the idea. She's doing a tremendous amount of physical exercise, so much so that at different times it's been a little bit of a concern to me as a parent about how much exercise she's getting. And so for me, as a parent, it was hard to watch her to have to take a gym class almost every semester and spend 1/4 of her day, because you have to realize it's a block schedule, so it's 1/4 of her day doing more physical exercise. To me, that was a concern for her. She would have very much liked to have taken a second language while she was at EHS, but the schedule would not allow for that. There's just no time. There's no ability. Now, she is taking an independent study right now. It just so happens because it had to fit with a quarter class in ballet, and she's preparing for auditions for professional companies. So that's great. The independent study, that's great. That's a wonderful opportunity for her. But from my family's perspective, from my perspective as a parent, I would have liked to have seen the option exist for us to apply for her to be waived from some of that physical education requirement. She also did take sport management and enjoyed it and took some of these other classes. However, the times where she was spending her entire semester doing 1/4 of her day with additional physical education was not the best thing for her. And she did not need it for her physical health. And she would have really appreciated and I think benefited in a lot of ways from being able to take a different academic class. So that's where my heart was coming from in requesting this. Now, obviously, if any change happens in the future, it's not going to benefit her. So I'm not advocating for this in any mean for personal reasons, because that opportunity's gone by. But I really felt like there's probably other people out there that might be in a similar situation to her, and that it would be nice if they had that opportunity.
So, and in the research that was done, there's no school that offers waivers like that, where a waiver is outside of school. It's for athletes in the school on team sports.
Right.
And in my experience as a student athlete in Connecticut, those were the kinds of waivers. If you were a 3-sport athlete, you played football, basketball, and baseball, then you didn't have to take PE that year.
Yeah.
But it wasn't about, I'm a Taekwondo junior black belt, and I've been studying 4 times a week, 3 hours a day in Taekwondo, and I'm going to get a waiver from PE to do that.
Mm-hmm.
That was never, I've never seen that. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm sure it probably does.
Mm-hmm.
But we're seeing in the 20 schools that were looked at, only 2 had waivers. One that we knew about is just student athletes on campus in a sport, a bona fide sport, which is one of those MIA-approved sports.
So I understand that, but even from my position and even why I'm advocating for this or suggesting it for consideration is not falling into that definition whatsoever, and not feeling as though that I wasn't looking to just blanketly waive all athletes, but I think there might be unique circumstances where it might be warranted.
Well, and so I would wonder if, and I think Dr. Prone, you're the one who mentioned this, I believe it was Dr. Prone, that, if there were a specific case of a student who had specific needs, and we have that happen all the time, not just in physical education classes, but in all kinds of classes in all realms of the programs that we provide in our schools. And if there's a specific student with a specific need, and they come to us, come to the principal, come to me, come to the special education department, then we work with that family to try to determine a way to address those needs. And so my thought would be, rather than making a change in policy, that we make sure that everyone understands that they can come to guidance, that they can come to building administration, they can come to the superintendent if there's a specific need, and that we'll investigate it and make the decisions that we feel are in the best interest of each student in our district. We do that time and time again, not necessarily in physical education, but there's no reason why we couldn't do that in physical education as well.
The graduation requirements are ours. The East Hampton Public School graduation requirements. So the state's not saying you have to take PE 4 times a year for 4 years. They're not saying that at all. We've established, within the framework that the state has set up, 8 credits for PE. And that leaves, if you do the math, that leaves plenty of quarters or semesters for students to take other classes. Philosophically speaking, I disagree with specialization in athletics. I think it's bad for kids to do that. And I've always advocated multiple sport athletes, because when you start putting that amount of time in one sport, you start getting repetitive injuries, and it's dangerous. So I think the more diverse you have of experience athletically, the better you are served as an athlete. And that's from a guy who played football at University of Massachusetts, played basketball, played, baseball, softball when I got old and fat, and I still try to do what I do. And I think we have to think about the specialization thing that's going on with our kids too. They're spending too much time. They're playing too much in one sport.
Well, and I think that gets back to that education piece of the name physical education.
Exactly.
Because it really is about education, not just about an athletic activity necessarily. And clearly our program provides many different kinds of opportunities for physical education. But I believe, or I wonder if that isn't what you're speaking about, that educational piece.
I was working back to that point, but that is exactly what I was saying, is because it's not just about being able to throw that football 60 yards. It's about being able to, socialize. Brian and I might not hang out as friends during school, but in PE class we might be on the same badminton team, and we can socialize together. It's not just about athletics. It's about interaction socially. It's about being a team player. It's about, learning to win, learning to lose, all those things.
I think that that's the uncomfortable point that nobody's kind of addressed directly, probably out of deference to Nancy and respect for Nancy, that there's kind of this, in education and just in our population, there's this question of the validity of physical education. Is this antiquated, and why do we still subscribe to this? What is the value in it? Is it on par with something like foreign language of it? And I think that we have to, as educators and administrators, remember that while we want to offer our young people a lot of free choice and and accommodate their needs and wishes to a great degree, there is some necessary component of I do know what's best to some extent. For example, I taught history, and 80% of my students would have preferred to be in any other classroom, in any other building than in my classroom. But I will advocate to the day I die the necessity of exposure to basic world history and a full curriculum of United States history. Whether you choose to be there or not, you should be there. It's important to you, and you'll get value from it. And I think, Nancy, you would argue the same thing, that from a rigorous PE curriculum, there is more value than maybe meets the eye, or that you would recognize at first blush, that there's something that's taken. And your students seem to be, I've kind of come full circle on this as we've had this discussion, that I think the argument is really about the validity for PE. Are we saying that this is something that we hold to the same level as our other academics?
It's kind of twisted in a weird way that at the secondary level, we're having a conversation about waiving it, and at the elementary level, we're often talking about, please don't cut it.
Please don't cut it. Give them time for their bodies to process
My
and work
complaint
their
right now
thoughts
is,
out. Yes.
why is my kid
That's
watching a
an
movie
excellent
every single
point,
time there's an
Wendy.
indoor recess?
That's an excellent point.
So, yeah.
Well, I
it's-
think we're all on the same page that no one wants to see vast changes and see,
Or an erosion.
yeah, an erosion of the physical education program, or this vast movement to waive all athletes from taking PE classes. I think we're probably all on the same page with regard to that. I think maybe the question is there room for an occasional exception to the credits required from East Hampton High School for graduation? I think that's probably the issue that's at hand, I'm guessing.
Oh, I just find too, and thank you for that comment. But in physical education is something that a lot of our people, we look to cut that, and that's what we do at the elementary school. Amongst like music and art at the high school, the music program. So the validity, we do fight for the validity of physical education. I mean, since I've been a physical education teacher, it's always been a struggle to fight. And I have found when we relax the credits, when we relax the requirements, they don't come back. I'm hoping the physical education person comes back at the high school, but with continued cuts, it's probably not going to
And
happen.
it feeds into itself because you're
Yes.
communicating on some level, this isn't as important.
It's not
this
as
isn't
important.
as invaluable.
Correct.
Your enrollment will drop. Your participation will drop. The buy-in. I can see how
And then
that
we
would
keep
happen.
cutting, or we keep, okay, we did this, so now let's do this. So we want to try to just maintain the integrity of what we do have.
Can we communicate clearly that there is an open channel in extreme situations where it may be, let's say it's approaching a dangerous or an unhealthy level of exercise, or there's some, whom we just communicate clearly somewhere in the handbook, here's the first person you should discuss, and the hierarchy goes thusly. So, really embrace that open door policy.
The first person they should discuss with is their physical education
Right.
teacher. And in having this discussion with Mr. Millard in regards to, coming here, if a student on a game day, they can go easy. They're not marked off. They need to participate because what is rigorous about our phys ed program is it's equality, and that's what kids do respect. That the athletes are treated in physical education the same way as anybody else. If you sit out, you get the same penalty, but there's flexibility. So if a student came to me, Miss Dunn, I have a game today, or it's a game day and they go easy, that they can go easy. They don't have to do 20 push-ups or. And they know that. And so the first person would be that the instructor.
But there are two things that I'm hearing. I'm hearing the exception for the overtaxed athlete possibly who's dancing 60 hours. Then there's the exception, little Fred here wants to take an AP class, but he can't fit it into his schedule because he has to fulfill this PE requirement. And so that was, I think, Peter, what you're talking about, is the possibility of opening up a place within the schedule for that. I argue that as 108 credits, there's a lot of room within our schedule. It's at times the 4x4 restricts us. Maybe the conversation we should be having is looking at the 4x4. Is there a way to hybridize it so that we can offer more choice to students? Maybe that's a conversation that needs to have. And what these are just symptoms of a malady. Maybe that's something that should be happening. I'm sorry.
Just a factual question. Is there any percentage of the physical education program as it's currently offered that's devoted to active cardiovascular physical activity, the kinds that we were describing as being beneficial for athletes?
Yes.
Right, and there's a portion of it that's dedicated to more academic and sort of intellectual classroom piece focus, right? There's a proportion of one and a proportion of the other within the program, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Again, from those two facts, what I wonder is if what would be lost with the waiver would be therefore only the education, only the classroom education piece. It seems to me as though there's room to thread a needle here without sacrificing anything that people have spoken to, which is for the physical education department, and I defer to you on this, because I know this whole subject brings us back, and we've had difficult conversations like this before, where the school committee is trying to micromanage things that we're not in the same position of expertise that you are. But I would trust the high school physical education teachers and the faculty as a whole and the educational leaders there to come to the committee and say, of the 8 credits, this is the percentage which is classroom education based. And that we then, with that information, might be able to consider that the cardiovascular dimension in the physical education course, while it might not be with the same people if it was on the soccer field or the basketball court or the baseball diamond, as it would be in the physical education class. I'll grant that there may be, and I would caution the folks who disagree with my position to not go too far down the road about the extraordinary social merits of physical education without it raising an interesting question about what the social value is of participating on the football team or the basketball team or the baseball team, because I think a lot of the values that you've described happen for those athletes there. And if you suggest that they won't happen unless they're in physical education, you run the risk not of in the desire to validate the importance of physical education, you run the risk of invalidating a lot of what's important in the school-based athletic program. So I would caution you on doing that in the course of making the argument.
I don't think that was the point they were making.
Yeah, and I completely disagree. I think being on the field, I'm going to be with a lot more like-minded people.
The one opportunity they're saying for those two to mingle is in that environment.
Yeah, they're not socializing with non-athletes. They're socializing with their peer athletes.
And if you really look at it, I'm a football player. I'm hanging out with other football players. I rarely hang out with the hockey players, the basketball players, the girls' basketball players, the swim team. So that's.
You mean in 108 credits?
Here's the thing, Peter. If
Come on.
I would not.
I'm not. I find myself going to this further position because the arguments that are being used against the possibility of this waiver beg these questions. I'm surprised that we have such a concern that the only place that social activity will occur is in this physical education course sequence, and that it won't occur anywhere else. That we run the risk of suggesting things that I don't think we don't mean to. I think that there's probably plenty of opportunities at East Hampton High School where students who come from all kinds of different athletic walks of life, from people for whom athletics is not a big deal to people for whom it's a crucial part. But I'm willing to bet that they interact socially in a number of ways at the high school.
In classrooms, they do.
Yeah.
At lunch, they do. You're right.
I think there are few of those opportunities, and those opportunities are the general requirements for all student body, which are few and limited. And me in my high school, no offense to you, Nancy, I would have forsaken gym had I been given the opportunity, but gym back then was much different than it is now. I would have taken 4 languages, and I would have taken it, and that would have been to my detriment. That's what I would have chosen at 15 and 16 and 17 years old, and it would have been to my detriment. So I think that my main concern is treating this. If you're saying you don't have enough room in the 108 credits you're allowed, why is it that we are saying physical education is the one we should consider pulling from? Why not say, well, let's relax the foreign language requirement. Let's relax the U.S. history requirement. Let's relax the requirement. We are making, without even realizing it, we've steered
we're not talking about
directly
relaxing
to
those requirements in the absence of them being met in some other way.
But
I'm
of
not
course they
advocating
may
that
be.
we not require students to take 2 years of a language
Right.
unless there is within the network of the high school. Because so far, as far as I'm willing to go on the waiver, is for students who are participating in East Hampton High School sports. So unless there was no other way within the high school for a student to acquire the language skill, I would never advocate lessening that requirement. So again,
But this isn't a private, we're
I
talking about
think-
public education. It's about general, that's why we have general requirements, that you get a diverse, you get a taste of different things.
about
If you want to pull that taste of that and do a specialized this, because you're already doing another specialized, that's a private school, that's an outside curriculum piece. That's something you've chosen to do. That's not the role of a public education.
So I think Brian would like to say something else. Let's give our student an opportunity to speak.
Just to relate to relaxing the other core, what we consider core requirements at the high school. In the history department, you need to complete 16 credits or 4 semester courses. And 3 of those 4 semester courses are required. You have US 1, US 2, and World History. And then there's a 4th elective course that it is up to the student's discretion as to what history course they'd like to take. As I'm sure any teacher, administrator, or anybody here would agree, I'm very involved politically. I'm president of the Student Council, vice president of the Mall United Nations Club. I serve on the school committee. Should that 4th credit then be waived for me because I'm making up for it politically elsewhere? So I don't really think that it is a solid situation just for athletes. I think that is across the board. If you have a mathlete who wants to waive a math credit, if you have somebody in the art club who wants to waive an art credit, if you have somebody in science club who wants to waive their chemistry credit, I think that's a slippery slope that we're going to start letting our foundation and our requirements at the high school, we're just going to let them go. Regardless of social standpoints or academic standpoints, we can't lose that in the 21st century. Really.
See, that to me is the most compelling and far more compelling than what else has been said. With all due respect to the speakers, I disagree with much of what else has been said. I can see that point because that's all happening within the organizational structure of the high school. I hope, again, with certified or qualified people advising it. And there you now have a comparable example. And I just want to be clear that if we're going in the direction that it sounds like, which is an appeal to Dr. Perrone or to the superintendent, that you would be allowed to make such an appeal if you wanted to be waived from that class on the grounds that you did something else, like the things you've described. And that's something you'd support.
Sure. That said, I think that it's important to note that athletes, on a survey that we have done in low impact fitness, and I'm sure Ms. Dunn has done in many other courses, athletes, if given the chance to waive their PE credits, would still take PE.
Of course.
I know that
You would take your history.
I love the social science department. I've taken 24 credits of social science, and I'm going on my 28th next semester. I think that I don't want to call it a lost cause, but I think that it'd be a moot point to try and get people to waive something that they don't really want to waive. And granted that it would be an option, I don't think it'd be the path that we could use our time and resources to discover, really.
Yeah, I don't think we ever intended to try to even think about discussing a policy that would kind of put forth this open-ended waiving motion into effect for the majority of students. But I think the intention of the discussion was more for the true exceptions out there and the unique circumstances, and to give consideration to, for whatever reason, people might want to be appealing something along the lines in the physical education realm. But I think you're correct that the vast majority of athletes wouldn't want to waive out of PE. They would embrace that.
And if we were to waive it, as like Brian just explained with the social studies, if we were to waive it, it would have to be for everybody and not just athletes.
Right. I don't think this was, even if it looks like this is going in the direction of denying a waiver and kind of be, I get the sense though that this was a beneficial discussion. I think it's important that rather than just making these rubber stamp decisions and saying we're going to do this because it's really nice once in a while to go back and really put something under the microscope and say, why do we make this choice? Why do we choose to support this? Why is this So I think I'm going to take something, even if it all, it comes back full circle, but I think that.
And I appreciate, as a school committee, that you weighed this so heavily. I mean, ultimately, it is your decision, and you can do what you want, and you can impose a waiver, and that I have a lot of respect for that. That you've considered it, it's been on the table for a while, and that you're thinking about it, and that you're looking at different sides of it. So, kudos to you for that.
I just want to say, I agree with what Laura said. There's not even a motion on the table on this. This is just an information gathering, although it may not have felt that way. And so I want to thank you. This information you gave us, we got tonight. I'm looking forward to going through it. I want to thank you for putting it together and for getting the students involved. And I want to just second whoever mentioned, if someone says, hey, Coach Miller, I need a soft day today, he let me do that in 2002, 2003. And I know it's a great team down there already that takes these things into account. If people have a concern for a phys ed teacher or for an administrator, that we've got people down there listening to them already. So I just want to thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for coming to speak with us and sharing all of this research.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on our agenda. Our matters for action. We have the minutes from the December 9th meeting. We have a motion?
For the waiver?
No, for the minutes?
Minutes, I'm sorry. Motion to approve the minutes for the regular meeting on December 9th, 2014.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. We have several warrants. So we're moving on to that? Yes. Motion to approve the school payroll dated December 11th, 2014, in the amount of $466,194.98.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
One what's the word? Abstention? Thank you. I'm trying to think of the word. Thank you.
Motion to approve the accounts payable authorization for payment dated December 11th, 2014, in the amount of $411,968.91.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Motion to approve the school payroll dated December 24th, 2014, in the amount of $469,758.72.
Second.
All those in favor?
She wanted to say something tonight.
Aye. Motion to approve the accounts
Abstentions,
payable
yeah.
authorization for payment dated December 24th, 2014, in the amount of $206,432.53.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Motion to approve the school payroll dated January 8th, 2015, in the amount of $436,896.35.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Motion to approve the accounts
Abstentions, yeah.
payable, motion to approve the accounts payable authorization for payment dated January 8th, 2015, in the amount of $159,585.38.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. I think that's it. This payment adjustment, Sue, do we have to do anything with this?
Can you read it?
On December 24th, 2014, check number 29910 for amount $1,255 was voided.
Keep going.
I'm sorry. Overcharge service by Industrial Residential Security, LLC. Payment done on warrant date December 11th, 2014. Contained a check for payment of $1,170 and the remaining amount of $85 for another bill. The corrected invoice for $117.85 will be paid on January 8th, 2015.
I believe it was an overpayment because we were overbilled.
Yes.
We don't have to approve this?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm not 100%
It's just information.
There's no pink sheet, so, okay.
It's information.
Just making sure. All right, I just need one signature. That's it for me.
Okay.
The next Thursday.
Last on the agenda, we have an out-of-state field trip request.
Motion to approve the out-of-state field trip request for East Hampton High School to Washington, D.C.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Thank you. Yeah, keep going. Go, go, go. I